What's up guys, this is TCG Sam here, and in today's video, we're going to be trying 3 different decks at 3 drastic different price points to find out which one is the most worth it at its price. Just kidding, I'm not Buzzfeed, but I do enjoy their videos, and this was kind of inspired by their Worth It series, where they kind of go over 3 different foods at 3 different drastically different price points, and kind of analyze each one to see which one is the most worth it. So like in this video, I'm going to be kind of doing a spin on that, where I discuss 3 competitive Yu-Gi-Oh decks at 3 different price points. So like $50, rough $200, and like $1,000. So like those are 3 definitely very different price points for 3 different decks. But I'm just going to show you guys how they can all compete and like the benefits and disadvantages of each one. So starting off, here I have my $50 budget shaddoll list. You can pretty much get this whole deck for just 3 structure decks plus like a few extra staples. So guys, you can see the main deck is like very close to like 85-90% of structure deck cards. You don't really need much outside of the main deck, and like the extra deck, most of it is already going to be coming with the structure deck, which is just really nice. The money comes in from like probably the most expensive cards are like Schism, next is like Veiler, and then Harpy Feather Duster. Yeah, I know it's kind of expensive right now, but I assume it's gonna get a reprint soon. But yeah, anyways, that's gonna be the first list. In this video, if I didn't say it earlier, I'm gonna be going over 3 dual replays with these 3 different decks, and kind of be discussing the strengths and weaknesses of each one in that, like not necessarily just in terms of deck, but like in terms of that price point for like a competitive player. So if you're new to the game or just wondering how much you want to spend on Yu-Gi-Oh, hopefully this video helps you. But yeah, without any further ado, let's get into the very first duel. Welcome to the first duel of this video, and that's gonna be with the $50 shaddoll deck that I showed a bit earlier. So yeah, I'm gonna be showcasing what this deck can really do for this price point. So like, of course, this is the cheapest of all 3 decks, and I just want to show that it can also compete with the top meta decks, just like the other 2 can. So yeah, I'm not really going to be commentating much over it. I do some standard shaddoll plays here, set up like as much resources as I can, because I don't think I'm able to OTK in this turn. And then so like the thing with the Pure Shaddolls deck, at this price point, you don't have cards in your extra deck like Access Code Talker, Boros, or Dragon. So that makes things a little difficult to like OTK, so you have to play more of a control build. Obviously, yes, the deck can still OTK, it just becomes a little bit harder. So that you have to draw multiple fusion spells, and you probably need to resolve a shaddoll fusion from your deck going second. So like, probably the best it can do is like set up a bunch of control stuff, so like Shaddoll Schism for a Winda, Fresh Shell Incarnation for App Clone on your opponent's turn, and like of course Winda Send. And then like if this was an Shaddoll Fusion too, like double Winda, App Clone Negate, like it's still pretty hard for any meta deck to break that. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to really say about the deck. It's obviously perfect for people who just want to get into the game and like don't know how much money they really want to spend on Yu-Gi-Oh. This is perfect because it's just pretty much 3 structure decks, couple of other staples. The reason I chose shadolls for this is because their structure deck is like just so perfect for this, because they have every shaddoll card you need like for the deck, plus like staples like Allure of Darkness, Armageddon Knight, Super Polymerization, Twin Twisters. So like you already have a pretty stacked main deck, and like your extra deck pretty much just needs like really cheap cards like Cross Sheep, Gravity Controller, Proxy of Magician, Borolo Dragons, stuff like that, and like a Super Poly Target, which all should be pretty cheap. Plus like you don't really need anything else in your main deck that's expensive other than Shaddoll Schism. It's probably the most expensive card in the main deck. But like other than that, the whole deck, like $50, man, it's crazy for a deck that can like OTK, play control, break boards, like make boards too, and it's just incredible, really. So yeah, overall, I'd recommend this $50 build of shadolls for people who just want to get started into the game, don't know how much they want to spend. So like just in case they don't like Yu-Gi-Oh or anything, you should definitely be spending around this much for decks. This can definitely win a locals, in my opinion, like potentially even top of regionals. YCS, a little bit of a stretch. You need to draw really good, and you just need to have a bit more luck for a YCS, but like honestly, for locals or regionals, definitely competitive, as you guys can see. So yeah, so my concluding thoughts on this. Once again, like I said, this is perfect for anyone who just wants to get into the game, or like if you want to make sure you always have a deck to play. Like this, I feel like Shaddolls always will be at least tier 2, tier 3 in the meta, like, or at least a rogue contender, so like they can always compete because their cards are just so good. And since they're so under the radar, it's unlikely they'll ever get hit by anything. So it's a pretty solid investment for like 3 structure decks, a couple of staples. But yeah, that's actually gonna do it for the first deck, and now we're gonna be moving on to the $200 deck. Alright guys, so welcome to the second price point in this video that we're going to be covering, and that's roughly the $200 to, well, $300. I say $200, but like this deck is probably closer to $300 because of expensive staples like Infinite Impermanence and Access Code Talker. But like at this price point, you're able to afford some of those expensive cards. If you're trying to play Slave with a $50 deck, as you can see, we pretty much could not afford any of the really expensive staple cards like Imperm or any something, but like now we're able to definitely afford stuff like that, plus powerhouses like Access Code Talker. So at this price point, it's like kind of the mid-tier of competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! In my opinion, this is probably the average price of a tier 1, tier 1.5 deck. Pretty fair in my opinion to be able to compete with both cheaper decks and a lot more expensive decks. Like at this price point, you're definitely going to be getting good value from your deck. You'll be able to compete at regionals, at YCSs, and the deck in theory should have some longevity. Since it won't be at the very forefront of the meta, it's unlikely to receive like devastating hits that completely make the deck unplayable. So the reason I chose Salamangreat for this is they come in a structure deck, should theoretically be cheap. A lot of their cards are pretty cheap. The only thing that's expensive is like Lady Debug, staple hand traps like Nibiru, Imperm, and of course the Access Code Talker in the extra deck, which I felt like was kind of a necessity in this because because this deck can make Update Jammer plus Access Code Talker and Transcode Talker. It's a 5300 dude that can like pop 3 cards and attack twice. So like that's just a 1 card OTK machine, which is very needed in a kind of hybrid combo control deck like Salamangreats. Yeah, anyways, I'm gonna be going over more of my thoughts in the duel video, so that's coming up right now. Alright guys, so welcome to the second duel of the video, where I'm gonna be playing a $200 Salamangreat deck, and this is probably the average price in my opinion for a pretty good solid tier 1.5, even tier 1 deck. If like the meta becomes pretty cheap, like this is this is the price of like a solid contender. Definitely can compete at both the local, regionals, and like even YCS level. So for the average competitive player, this is my estimate is probably you're going to be spending around this much money on a competitive deck, assuming you don't spend money on like extra expensive staples like TTT or Forbidden Droplet, stuff like that. So like staples that cost like over $10-15, probably going to be out of your price range if you're trying to play competitively at this price level. But like you can still afford more cards than like your than like the $50 version of a competitive deck. So like now you can incorporate cards like Ash Blossom and other hand traps into your deck, which gives you a better chance of competing with the meta. You also get to play slightly more expensive cards like Dark Ruler No More, which is really good for cracking boards, and it's just something that was completely out of the $50 deck's budget, because it's around like $10-15 Canadian dollars if I'm correct. And same thing with like something like Nibiru, which is like $15 Canadian roughly. So yeah, overall, this deck definitely can compete. I would not recommend this for someone who just like gets into Yu-Gi-Oh! So like starting out, they never played Yu-Gi-Oh! Before. I personally would not recommend spending this much on the game, because like you don't know if you're gonna like it. So if you don't like it, that's just a bunch of money down the drain. Trust me on this. I've learned my lesson with other card games that I've played where I spent that much money on it and it just turns out I didn't like it. But if you're sure you want to play competitively, this is probably the average price you're gonna be paying for a very competitive deck. So like in the case of Salamangreats, obviously they came in a structure deck, but at this price level, they don't necessarily have to come in a structure deck, but I'm just saying Salamangreats, in my opinion, is probably one of the better ones. Funnily enough, most of the price like just comes from the one access code talker in your extra deck. That's like about half the price point right there. And the only reason I put that in is because it's so important to the Salamangreat strategy. It helps them OTK with cards like Update Jammer and stuff. But like the rest of the deck, like honestly just cheap, other than the hand traps, of course. So like now your budget should and potentially could include infinite impermanence. It's a little bit stretching it. 200 is a little bit on the low side, probably closer to 250, 300 for this deck if you play impermanences plus the access code talker. But like you don't even need the impermanence. You can swap it with any other hand trap. But you can definitely afford cards like Ash Blossom Joy Spring, aside from your Gamma, other extra deck staples like Nightmare Phoenix now, because like of course Nightmare Phoenix wasn't even in the price range of the $50 deck. So yeah, I'd actually once again, like I said earlier, I recommend this deck for people who know they want to get into competitive Yu-Gi-Oh. This is probably the best amount of money you can get this is probably the best value you get for your money, because you get a competitive tournament deck and you can compete with so many other decks out there. It's just insane. Plus, it's still fairly cheap for Yu-Gi-Oh! In Yu-Gi-Oh! Terms, at least. I know for like something like Pokemon, it's probably a lot cheaper. But like in terms of Yu-Gi-Oh! $250, $300 even, pretty cheap for a meta deck, considering how expensive meta staples are these days. But like at this price level, you still don't have access to cards like Lightning Storm, TTT, or Forbidden Droplets, like those really expensive staples that people might just really want. Of course, you don't need them to compete, but they are very nice to have. So yeah, there's not much more I have to say about this. This is a really good, solid deck for the price that it is. So like for 250 roughly, you can play a very competitive Salamangreat deck that will probably have really good longevity, because I'm pretty sure if anything, cards for them are going to come off the ban list as opposed to getting hit, because it's not really in the forefront of the meta right now. So like if Konami is nice, they might even bring something like Salamangreat Circle back to 3, which should be really nice, help the consistency of the deck a lot. And now with cards like Parallel Exceed, you just get a lot of generic cyber support, which is really good. In addition, they're Cybers, and Konami seems to really like giving cyber support because obviously of the anime, and so it's pretty good to invest in this deck, because I have a feeling it's gonna get more support, or their cards are gonna get off the ban list. Maybe not the support part, but like at least they're gonna get more generic cyber support, and their cards are gonna be coming off the ban list. Another thing you may have noticed, I forgot to mention it in the $50 section, that the decks I'm showing are mainly like a control combo hybrids, like not pure control as in like Altergeist or Subterra or something that's a trap deck, because in my opinion those actually take a little bit more skill than these kind of hybrid decks, because the thing with control decks, like pure control decks, in my opinion, you have to manage your resources really well and understand the interactions your cards have with your opponent's cards, and understand all the important meta interactions. So for a newer player, they may be a little overwhelming. So I put in a hybrid control deck. So like they have control elements, but also have combo elements. But their combos are very simple. They're all very linear plays, for the most part, and like it's very simple to understand. Plus, should be a lot of leeway if you make an error or something. So like compared to like a pure combo deck, like let's say like Dragon Link or something, you can't really misplay with that deck. And still put up a board. Like you pretty much have to play perfectly to play through hand traps and whatnot. But like with a deck like Shaddolls or Salamangreat, there are many different lines you can take to actually get to the final board you want to make, and they're all very simple. The concepts of the deck are easy to understand. Their cards are straightforward for the most part, and they all have very powerful cards. So yeah, in conclusion, I'm gonna say this one more time. The $200 deck, very good for the average competitive player who wants to start playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Competitively and take it seriously. Go to regionals and consistently play at locals. So yeah, that's gonna do it for the this section of the video, and now we're gonna be moving on to the $1,000 deck. Alright guys, so welcome to the final price point of this video, and that's gonna be the $1,000 to the $1,200, $1,500 mark. So at this price point, in my opinion, you should only be paying for this much for a deck if it's like tier 1, tier 0, like very forefront of the meta. Just for this deck specifically, Eldlich itself is already like a third of the price, which is just kind of ridiculous in my opinion, just for each of these 3 cards, considering it's not even a meta staple like TTT or Dropless. And the Dogmatika engine itself is quite expensive too. Plus the Invoke engine is still kind of pricey because Invocation is still pretty hard to get. So like this deck comes to probably over 1,000 Canadian dollars. Because you have staples like Lightning Storm, Evenlies, and Infinite Permanences as well. But like at this price point, your deck is very, very consistent, should be very, very consistent, and that's the case with this deck. It has a lot of starter cards, a lot of power cards. I can definitely compete with the meta right now. Not much more I need to say about this. I'm going to be offering more of my thoughts in the duel to come, so yeah, stay tuned for that. It is coming up right now. Alright guys, so welcome to the final part of the video where I go over the $1,000 competitive deck. So at this price point, you're definitely going to be able to afford expensive meta staples like Lightning Storms, Impermanences, stuff like that, Forbidden Droplets, even if you really wanted to. In the case of this deck, Eldlich Dogmatika, like the Eldlich cards, like Eldlich themselves is like already almost a third of the deck's price pretty much. It's crazy how expensive that card is. Plus the Dogmatika stuff is like a good $400-$500 Canadian for the whole engine, so like that pretty much takes up most of your budget. But like you also have a little bit of room to play cards like Ash Blossom, Effect Veiler, Kristalline Hockey, Fibrax combo into like Selene and Access Code, so you still have really powerful cards. So like obviously the true price of this deck may be a little closer to like $1,200 to $1,500, but like it's in this general price range. But yeah, anyways, what I have to say about this deck, this is for the people who want to go all in on Yugioh. So like they know they really want to play Yugioh competitively, and they're not afraid to lose that money if the deck gets hit, because paying this much for like a deck, it usually means it's probably going to be one of the top meta decks at the moment, or it's going to be like a top tier contender, and it's going to be like probably the best, one of the best, if not the best deck of the format, if you decide to pay this much for the deck. So like I wouldn't recommend paying this price for like any deck that's like worse than tier 1. So like obviously there's some expensive decks that people like but aren't necessarily competitive. I would not recommend paying that much for them. If you want to pay this much money, you definitely got to make sure your deck is competitive and is actually good. So yeah, there's not really much more I have to say about this other than the fact that yes, I realize it's expensive. Yu-Gi-Oh is an expensive game, and you probably will end up losing money if you pay this much on a deck, because cards are gonna get hit. You're paying this much for a meta deck, probably gonna get hit on an eventual ban list. So it's very important to take that into consideration when buying this deck. But otherwise, this deck gives you the best chance to top of regionals, win a YCS, or top of YCS, whatever. They're definitely able to play through opponents' boards a lot better and a lot more consistently. They're able to usually put up better boards and are definitely more consistent because they have access to consistency cards potentially, like TTT, or their deck in general is just more consistent. So like a deck like Dogmatika's very consistent. You have 6 starter cards in Nadir Servant and Ecclesia, plus the Invoke stuff you have 7 starters in Meltdown, Alistair, and Terraforming, and then like the Eldlich stuff you have triple Eld land, and then you have your bunch of traps for a really good grind game. So once again, as you noticed, this is not a pure combo deck, nor is it a pure control deck. It's kind of a hybrid of both. So like it should be still very easy to understand. So like if you're rich and coming into Yugioh, must be nice. But other than that, this deck should be very straightforward, in my opinion, to play. Invoke stuff pretty much only does one thing, and that's like normal summon Alistair, get a free fusion monster based on the attributes available. The Dogmatika stuff, pretty much you only have 2 targets search. You have Fleur de Lis for a negation or Dogmatika Punisher for a pop. Ecclesia acts as an extender in that way. You have hand traps, should be pretty easy to understand. And then finally the Eldlich stuff, like pretty much you just gotta make sure when to time your Conquistadors and Hawkeros, and in the end phase you get free resources. So like even if you're in a bad spot suddenly, you just get free resources from your deck every single turn, which is just really good. So yeah, this should still be a relatively straightforward deck. So yeah, if you're paying, once again, if you're paying this much, I feel like you definitely should at least have a very basic understanding of Yu-Gi-Oh, the meta game. And it's important to remember that if you're paying this much, it is very high risk, because you will likely have to lose most, if not all, the money you spend on this because of eventual deck hits. Just a note here, what I was saying earlier about breaking boards, like as you can see here, he has Herald of the Arclight, Conductor, Lost World, and Savage. Lost World's important because I can't target his guys, so I can't use Infinite Impermanence or Eldlich Effect Descend, which is just really bad for me. So yeah, as you can see, I'm just about to demonstrate how good this deck is. Like, as you can see, I think I drew Veiler for, I think I drew something. I drew a Terraforming for turn, which is really good. But like this is actually a very formidable board. So like I can't target his guys, so 2 of my ways to break his board are dead. He has a Book of Moon, so I can't really run over the Herald that easily. It's an Omni Negate in Savage and Herald, and so, which is just huge. And his guys are enormous too. So like, and I pretty much have like 1-2 dead cards in my hand right now, so I'm pretty much playing with 4 cards. Like, this can't even be used. Like, in reality, I'm playing with like 3 cards, playable cards. Like, this just goes to show how powerful this deck is. So like, yes, you may say, oh, pay to win, but like the general rule is the more you pay, the more likely your deck is to be good. So at this point, I thought for a long time, because to break his board, I need to definitely beat over the Herald, because that Herald was causing me a lot of problems right now. Another note: Linkuriboh should have been relinquished Anima, the guy that sucks whatever's on top of it and attaches it. So like I could have potentially baited something out. But like, anyways, it doesn't matter. I just need Ecclesia to go straight into battle phase Rambo for Herald. So now I have Eldlich Effect turned back on to bait out another negation. So I beat over Herald. And Eldlich phase 2, try to send Savage, he negates. Eldlich, send Meltdown, special summon it onto the board. And at this point, I'm very fortunate he didn't Conductor me, because I needed to make a Selene here, Selenes are super powerful. A very generic engine with like Christian Hockey Fibrax. You can summon Effect Veiler, turn Hockey Fibrax and Effect Veiler into Selene. Selene, assuming there are more than 3 spells in play, like, and in the graveyards, like, this should just be fine. You summon the Effect Veiler back, and then you could turn the Effect Veiler into any Link 1, like Linkuriboh or Relinquish Anima. Turn those 2 into Access Code Talker, and now you have a 5300 Access Code Talker that can destroy 3 cards on the field off of just 1 Hockey Fibrax, so it's pretty incredible. But yeah, anyways, I go for Alice right now. It doesn't matter if he books now, it won't do anything. I can fuse with my guys face down. I make it Mechaba, and he attempts to Tyranno, but I have the monster in hand still to negate it. So as you can see, it all works out pretty well. I'm able to break his board and do the Access Code Talker play I mentioned. Obviously, I didn't have Hockey Fibrax engraved, so I didn't have the 3rd pop. That didn't really matter, because in the end phase, like, now I get resources with this. Like, as you can see, this deck is really incredible with a kind of average hand, I would say, because like I had two cards that were initially dead. The Imperm and the Veiler were pretty much dead. Like, I was able to break his 3 disruption board with like targeting protection. So I think, in my opinion, it's just really good. But yeah, my concluding thoughts on this deck. Once again, if you're paying this much, just be ready to lose it. You have to understand that you will most likely lose the money for this. It's a sad reality, but if you're afraid to do that, I definitely don't recommend spending this much on Yu-Gi-Oh. Spend probably like $200, $250, $300 max on a very competitive deck, very solid competitive deck that can definitely compete. And perhaps those decks will get hit eventually, but that way your losses aren't as great. And also, those decks, in my opinion, are slightly less likely to get hit because they shouldn't be like tier 0 or tier 1.5. Sorry, tier 0 or tier like 0.5. They're gonna be tier 1 at best. So like, maybe they get like a slap on the wrist from time to time, but like, other than that, they should be pretty safe investments, in my opinion. So yeah, overall, I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. I thought personally I had a lot of fun making it because I got to play all these different decks and explain my thoughts on it and kind of just share my experiences as a competitive player, because I played all three types of these decks. I spent $50 on decks, $200 on decks, and even up to $1,000 on a deck before. So I know how all of them function. I was able to compete with all of them at my locals and at regionals. So like, this just goes to show that no matter how much money you spend, you can still compete in Yu-Gi-Oh! So it's not 100% pay to win, but the more money you spend on the game, the better chance of topping you do have. So like, I just want to put that out there. It's a kind of a hard truth. It's a little unfortunate because it may act as a deterrent for newer players. But like, once again, you guys can just play the $50 competitive deck if you're just getting into Yu-Gi-Oh! You can also play the $200 to $300 competitive deck if you just want to be a very, very solid competitive player and have a very solid deck, or if you want to go all out, you can spend over $1,000 on Yugioh. But yeah, I just want to say thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for sticking around for this long, and please remember to leave a like and subscribe, and please help me reach my goal of 500 subscribers by the start of 2021, and that would mean a lot to me, so I hope you guys can do that for me. Thank you guys so much for watching once again, and I will see you soon. If you guys want the cheapest Yu-Gi-Oh cards on the market in Canadian dollars with free shipping to Canada, then be sure to check out my eBay page in the description below.